Okay, guys, welcome to Geezer Con. I'll tell
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
what would you expect, Jim? Come on, it's
Oh,
fun. We're here the day after 9 million Americans said screw you to Trump, and we are watching the expansion of our own little, what I like to call the war of the micro penises. Um, well,
oh, it's gonna be like
well,
that today, is it?
hey, Hegseth and Trump get together and decide to do something, you got to put the word micropenis in there somewhere. Um, so, now that I've got us off to a
Tiny
low,
start, small start.
we have nowhere to go but up.
Mm.
So, what is up with you guys?
Mm.
Um, my health is as good as it could be for an old geezer. We're finally getting some progress made on the home theater. Maybe someday I'll be able to watch a movie downstairs in the basement on the big screen instead of on the little monitor here. And let's see. And Sean made spaghetti last night. So all in all, it's been a good weekend for me. So yeah, how about you, Jim?
It's been a week. It's my usual. It's just, it is. I health wise, I'm my usual self. I'm all black and blue on my right hand side, which is better than the left side because the left side's the side that's all pins and screws and damage from military service. So when I fall on that side, that's some bad news. That's a couple days in the hospital on morphine. But the
Ouch.
last Sunday, as a matter of fact, I was on a long ride last Sunday. As you know, I ride a bike every morning, and last Sunday I took out the fat tire bike for the first time in a month, and I broke a pedal, and um, it was great because it was at the top of stroke when the pedal separated, and I did not damage my. Usually, when you separate a pedal, when a pedal breaks, you jam your foot into the pavement, and then the rest of the bike follows, and you wind up scraped up. And I managed to miss that, and I congratulated myself all morning. Man, I didn't injure myself on the bike when I broke the pedal. Now, I was 10 miles from home, so it was a lot of pedaling with the other leg to get back. But I congratulated myself all day, and then later in the day, I was in a warehouse moving some crates of water, and I had about 60 pounds in my hand, and I managed to hook the toe of my work boot on a pallet, and I went down hard on my right hand side. So I'm black and blue all down the right hand side. So today's the first day I got back on the bike. I did 30 miles this morning though, so I feel pretty good about it. But yesterday I wanted to go down to the No Kings rally, and I can ride the bike pretty far, and I can always coast if I have to. But hoofing around in the heat on my bruised hip seemed like a bad idea. But I did manage to get down there. It was a hell of a turnout for this crappy little backward ass redneck town. So after looking at the images online, it looks like the tide is turning. So it was impressive to me is that here there was a fairly decent turnout here. Um, and there was plenty of cars honking as they went past in support and waving. But what I did notice was that there wasn't a whole lot of the other. Now, I saw some pictures online of people that were getting coal rolled and the usual abuse that you get in this town. This town is 99% MAGA Trump voters, and there was not a whole lot of middle fingers. There was not a whole lot of pushback. I will say there wasn't, maybe those guys were cheering, but their rabid, reflexive support for Trump seems to have significantly diminished. And that's
Part of it might be the war, but I suspect a larger part of it is the price of gas went up $1 a gallon or
well,
more in many
that's
places,
exactly
and
it.
that's suddenly something people are saying. Wait a minute, what? I'm tired of winning. Okay,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and I see this online, and it's a valid statement that we Americans should be opposed to this fascism on moral principles, on fundamental principles, because this guy is wrong and he's crazy, and this ideology is morally bankrupt, and it's an ideology uh, of hate and selfishness and misery. And that's a true statement. I mean, decent human beings would be opposed to it on those principles, but Americans are greedy capitalists at heart, and if what it takes to oppose this is pain in the pocketbook, well, you know what, man, I'm going to take it. I will say that when you do these No Kings protests, if you can arrange to make sure that your backdrop are those gas price signs at the gas station across the street, that has some significant impact. Okay, and it is. Like I said, this is an ideology of selfishness, of profit over people. I mean, that's literally who Trump is. That's literally who he was when he was elected. He literally told you flat out the only thing that matters to him is the stock market, profit, and tax breaks for billionaires. And 77 million Americans looked at it and said, "That's what we want." And so it's not surprising that the only way to get through to those people is by costing them money out of their pocket every
Americans
day.
vote. This goes back to the 50s. Americans vote their pocketbook. When you have good times, Americans will vote for the administration. You have a recession, they vote for the opposition. This is why the Democrats kept winning, is the Republicans would drive the economy into a recession every single time. And the Democrats would come in and fix the problem, and the Republicans would then say, "Oh, look, we can." You can trace this as Reagan recession, Bush recession, Trump. Oh my God! Somebody asked me to say something nice about Trump. They say, "Oh, okay." I will say that Trump's handling of the war in Iran is every bit as skillful as his handling of the casino in Las Vegas.
Iran, yeah, but yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it is. He handled the war in Iraq the same way because he was president during that war too. The thing is, and that's the thing though, you see it. He inherited a economy in a country that was moving in the right direction, um, that was being repaired from his first administration. And what you're seeing now, again, you're looking at this. You're looking at an administration, an ideology of your angry drunk uncle. This is the guy, the blowhard at the end of the bar, that's got an opinion on goddamn everything. Everything in the world is wrong. It doesn't matter what it is. This is the guy
in the
that
bar, the guy at the
right,
end
the
of the
guy,
diner, right?
This is the guy. This is the shitty guy in the kitchen of every party. This is the guy at the end of the bar. This is your drunk uncle on the end of the couch at every family get together. This is the guy where everything in the world is wrong all the time. No matter what it is, doesn't matter what the subject is. This is the guy who down the whole world and blame some random thing, and gas prices are high. God damn those trans people. He's that guy, right? And a rational society ignores that guy. Look, shut up, go sit in the other room and be quiet. That's why he's stuck in the kitchen at the party, because nobody wants to talk to this asshole. But unfortunately, I think partially the rise of social media, rise of things like podcasts and podcasters like Rogan, and I'm not just blaming him, and I'm not blaming him at all. I'm saying it's part of a larger change in how people communicate. um, it gave a platform to those voices, to that shitty guy at the end of the bar who literally is the voice of millions of people who feel like they're disenfranchised, because they are disenfranchised and they should be disenfranchised, right? They're shitty people with shitty opinions and shitty outlook on the goddamn world. And in a rational society, they are relegated to the fucking kitchen where nobody wants to talk to them, right? But social media and the way changing communications technology worked and the trends of our society raised these people to voices that gave political power to that ideology, that shitty ideology. And the king of that mindset is Donald J. Trump. He's the guy that Trump has never said a decent thing about anybody in his life. He's never said, they talk about America, how much they love America, but the MAGA ideology that has taken over the Republican Party has never said a good thing about America ever. Not a goddamn word. They hate everything about this country. They hate the people who live here. They hate the people in their own goddamn party. They hate anyone who's different than themselves. They hate technology. They hate clean energy. They hate the food. They hate the culture. They hate kids these days. They hate the damn military. They hate the pussies who don't join the military. They hate war, but they hate peace. There's literally nothing that you can bring up with these people that they're not mad about. Okay?
It's all about what they're against. It's not about what they're for.
Right.
And I had this on my Facebook page last night and today. It's like, oh, we have to be against Harry Potter because J.K. Rowling is all right, yeah, okay, she is. But I says, choose your targets wisely. Go after J.K. Rowling because you'll never convince people to go after Harry Potter, which is $1 billion franchise anyway. And then it's like, you just won't. But you go after J.K. Rowling and you shame her, that's your target. And it's like, choose your targets appropriately. And it's like, we have got this gut level. You scream and leap, as Larry Niven used the Xinti, right? The scream and leap.
Scream and leap, no space. That's right.
There's no critical thinking. There's what's going to produce the greatest result. Where do we put the lever so that we can move the thing? And it's like, I am so tired of people with the scream and leap mentality that it's like, I want to scream and leap and throttle them. It's
and one of the reasons that things like Harry Potter never did anything for me, but it did for millions of people. Millions of people connected to that character in that universe, and despite the author, or maybe in spite of her, and connected to that and made it greater than build a universe that's greater than an author. It is the same thing with Star Trek and Roddenberry or whatever problematic characters or writers or people that might be part of any particular franchise. And so, they move beyond that kind of thing. And like you said, it's important to separate those pieces, but it's also, the other way is also important, where you say, well, I love Harry Potter, so I can't go against anything that J.K. Rowling says. That's nonsense. You have to, the separation has to be, smart enough to be able to separate.
It's not the work. And you can't hammer this in. And people, oh yeah, but she's benefiting every time I buy a Harry Potter book. She gets $2. So fucking what? When you're a billionaire, you don't care about $2.
Right. The 2 cents. Like I said, and don't get me wrong. If that's your protest and you want to withhold your money, that's certainly a thing. But again, it's just like, to me, this is like protesting Amazon or protesting Walmart. Again, these are things that are, I agree, they're worthwhile things, but you also forget that you wind up in a situation where, for example, and I tell people this all the time since we've got Bob Brown here, I get people say, well, I won't buy anything from Amazon, and the books that Bob Brown publishes are all on Amazon. Well, that's true. And Bob uses the residuals from that to donate to the ACLU and to causes that actually matter to you. All right. We're literally using the platform that you're mad at to benefit the causes that are actually important to you. And also, that platform, as problematic as it may be, is the only platform available to people.
There's only shades of gray. There are no absolutes. Right. It's like, I won't eat at Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby, but and I won't shop at Hobby Lobby. But somebody tells me Amazon is like, yeah, I can't give up Amazon. I live way the hell out in the boonies, and I need Amazon to deliver stuff. It's like, you balance what can.
Right, and again, I mean, Jeff Bezos is one of the most despicable people on the fucking planet. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I totally understand the argument, but again, like where I live, where I live, you've stayed in my house. The problem is that people tell me, well, you need to buy local. Well, first of all, there isn't any local. That's the problem. Walmart, Amazon, these big box stores have driven all the local business away. But I also live in the deepest of the deep South, and I will tell you that the local stores that are available are harder, far right, and far more the people knows than Amazon is. And so when you tell me I should support the local hardware store, they're the people with the giant MAGA flags out front, and people of color don't shop there for a reason. And so again, you have to pick your battles, and you have to. I will say left, right, people that I agree with, people that I disagree with. I am suspicious of fanatics and absolutists of any stripe. And
Yes,
so,
thank you.
especially when people begin speaking in terms of absolutism, whether it be left or right, this is where I begin to disengage from things. I will say that yesterday, though, one of the things that I thought was great yesterday. I mean, it depends on what numbers you look at, but there may have been as many as 9 million people in the streets yesterday, or maybe even more. Hell, there might have been that many in New York alone.
Well, there were
But there
3,200
was no
separate demonstrations.
right. But the only violence that you saw yesterday was from the authorities, from the police, from the counter protesters. You didn't see violence from the No Kings people. You didn't see them smashing windows or tearing down flagpoles or beating police officers to death or smearing feces on the wall of government buildings. And and this is the kind of thing that I think is important. You don't want to make any, but it's absolutely imperative to make this resistance heard. And I think I don't know. Trump was on a golf course yesterday, and so you don't know because that guy lives in a fucking plastic bubble, and you don't know how insulated and what his handlers let him see. There's definitely some fragmentation happening on Truth Social this morning, and I strongly suspect a lot of these people are are very scared. They can read the writing on the wall, but they should be. Again, this ideology. This is an ideology of angry, miserable people, and those kind of people don't build. They tear down, they destroy, they hate, they build walls, they fence people in, and that kind of ideology does not create. They like to fancy themselves as the 3%ers, the founders of America, they're somehow the inheritors of the ideology of the original founders, but they're not. These are not those people, whatever their flaws, and don't get me wrong, they had plenty. Um, both the very obvious ones and then some less obvious ones. But those people were the intellectuals of their time. They were the children of the Renaissance. They were highly educated. They were people who built and not destroyed. And so for this ideology of hate and fear and destruction to claim the inheritance of the founding fathers, you know, and I was thinking about that this morning. These on that long ass bike ride on my way back from out the countryside, hoping I didn't get killed by some giant coal roller that's angry about yesterday. These people, they don't build, they don't create anything. They don't. What's the end state of this ideology when you've deported all the people that you hate, when you've disenfranchised all the people that you don't think should vote, when you've silenced all the voices, when you've locked up all the people? What's the end state?
Well, you can
You
look
know,
to Russia, you can look to Nazi Germany,
right?
you can look to North Korea, you can look to any place that has tried to homogenize their people. They end up destroying their economy. Um, Nazi Germany needed slave labor, so that is the go. And Russia has slave labor in the Siberia. So basically, when you homogenize your economy, you depend on slave labor, and that's what the Thuglican Party, as I call them, that's where they're headed. They want a class of elites, and everybody else has to be a slave. And we know what happens with slave uprisings. All you have to do is watch Spartacus. Sooner or later, the slaves,
had
rebel.
enough.
We're
Yeah,
tired of being slaves. We want to be in charge. We want our own home. We want our little garden. We want. It's like I don't need to be a gazillionaire. I'm comfortable. I want to be able to watch movies and write books. That's it. And
right.
play with the grandkids once in a while when they're not being so rambunctious.
Right, but that's
Well,
and again, that's the thing though. Again, there's no. This war is a perfect example. Trump entered into this thinking, "I'm powerful. I have all the weapons, and you're nobody. You're some third world goat herders in Iran, and I'm going to drop bombs on you, and then magically all my enemies are going to go away. People will cheer me in the streets. The peasants will rise up, and they'll create democracy from the rubble, and I'll be a hero." And this is a mindset that we've had since Korea, and it's never worked. You cannot bomb people into democracy, and as much as the general population of Iran may have hated and feared the Ayatollahs or not, depending, bombing that country does nothing but unify the country behind people.
You
This
can't
is a
bomb
this is a
people into friendship. You can't bomb them into
That's
being
right. You
your
can't bomb
ally.
a country. You can't bomb a country into democracy. And every time I say that, of course, immediately I start seeing comments and say, "Well, what about Germany? What about Japan?" Listen, we didn't just bomb those people. That was an entire process. We fought a total war for 4 or 5 years longer in China and Japan. And then there was an entire process after that of reconstruction, the Marshall Plan. There was all kinds of stuff that came with it. It cost trillions of
The
dollars
Marshall
over
Plan was the
time.
smartest thing that the United States
Right.
ever did.
Right. And so there was an entire process, but and you don't see any of that in Iraq, Afghanistan, in Iran. You didn't see any of that in Vietnam. It was simply this, what people saw was the bombing campaign of World War II, and they didn't see any of the other stuff that came, all the invisible, non-sexy thing. You didn't make movies about the Marshall Plan. You made movies about bombers and the Battle of the Bulge. And don't get me wrong, those things were all magnificent battles or astounding acts of courage and heroism or determination, depending on how you look at things. But they were a small part of what happened afterwards. And so, again, but those are the things that you make movies about. It's just like the movies now they're making about the wars that I were part of. They don't make movies about people like me, the background, the people doing the intelligence work. They don't do that. They make movies about door kickers because that's the sexy part. And don't get me wrong, I like watching those movies too.
Yeah,
But
and
the
have you
bottom,
noticed that 90% of our public entertainments, whether movies or TV or books, are about revenge?
right.
It's like somebody hurt me and I'm justified in revenge. And if you were to take out the whole first 70 or 80% of the book or the movie or the TV show, what you would have is an evil person doing an evil act. The whole first part of the story is why the other person deserves
Yeah,
this evil act,
why you're justified in murder
why you're
and revenge and
justified.
that kind of thing. Yeah, and so like I said, we don't.
So
Again, it's a mindset.
anyway,
It's
it's
how
like
we.
I I have become something of a Buddhist in my old age. Is that why are you wasting energy being destructive? Because the thing that you destroy, either you rebuild it or you leave a wreck, for
Yeah,
somebody else to rebuild. It is the what they call the myth of the broken window, where
right.
the money you spend repairing the broken window is money you don't spend building something new. So
Right.
the fallacy of the broken window. So
Fallacy of the broken window. Right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
Well, see, again,
we
but
are living
that's
in a culture of broken windows. Oh yes, we can break this, and look how many jobs we'll create repairing the damage. But look what we could have built instead if we didn't break something first.
right. And
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 we are
again,
living in
this
a
is
culture of breakage.
right. The Iran war, this war that Trump has started in Iran, is a metaphor for larger things. It is the mindset of this ideology, this idea that you can just bomb people into something better. And
Yeah, we're going to bomb them into
that's
being our
exactly what they're
friends.
doing in this country. It's again, we went into Iran without a plan. And again, when I wasn't out on a bleeding edge, we were between conflicts. I was a military war planner. And so part of the job that I did was planning for these sorts of things. And so when I see what's happening in Iran, and I did war planning for a theoretical conflict with Iran in the Straits of Hormuz, that was literally my specialty. And so when I see what's happening in Iran, it's obvious that we went into this with the worst mindset. We went into this with the same kind of mindset that Saddam Hussein would have done it. Okay, without that long range planning, without regard to, we went into there with the idea that we're bigger and more powerful than you, and we'll pound you down, and you'll surrender. That's how it is.
Well,
Okay,
it's
and so
basically we're in this war because for two reasons. First of all, Trump has a small penis and doesn't want anybody to know. And second, he doesn't want us asking about the Epstein files. So this
well,
is
yeah,
his
and there's certainly that, and so, but also this has been, the war with Iran has been the Republican holy grail since fucking Reagan. I mean, these are the people that were embarrassed. These are the same people that have been mad about Cuba for 70 years. They were embarrassed at the Bay of Pigs, and they've been mad about this ever since. It's some dinky little island in the goddamn Caribbean, and they've been mad about Cuba ever since. It doesn't make any difference what Cuba does. By God, I mean, we had a chance. The regime that embarrassed them has fallen. We had a chance to establish relationships with them, and the one thing that we know above all else is that bombs don't defeat communism. What defeats communism is regulated capitalism. Okay, Levi's and Pizza Hut are what defeat communism. All right, the Chinese, you're seeing communism disappear from China because the old pajama wearing communists are dying off, and the generation now that's 20 and 30 years old, they want BMWs and Rolex watches, and they want big screen TV and 900 channels of streaming service, and they don't give a shit about communism. That's how you defeat communism. You don't defeat
well.
communism.
Let me interrupt you. When I was in Hong Kong, and this is like
So, worst thing that
2007.
ever happened to Chinese capitalism or communism was
Yeah,
getting to Hong Kong.
I asked one of the Chinese women who I knew. I says, "Whatever happened to communism?" Oh, we don't do that anymore. It doesn't work. I mean, this was the common attitude.
I
Yeah.
was in Hong Kong. I was in Hong Kong when it was British, and I was in Hong Kong when it was Chinese. And the worst thing that ever happened to the Chinese communism was Hong Kong, because the Chinese looked at that and said, "Why the hell aren't we all like this?"
And they did, and they converted Shenzhen into a free
Right.
trade zone. And all of a sudden, they turned this backwater little nothing into one of the most profitable, biggest cities in all of China.
Right.
It is a growth zone.
And even the Chinese communists were like, "Yeah, maybe this is what we should." Anyway, the bottom line is that what I was saying before is that we went into. You can tell we went into Iran without due consideration of decades of planning, and again with the mindset of we don't need all that planning, and we don't need to lead expert. I will tell you that war is a science, whether you like that or not, whether you find that horrifying or not, it's still true. And we have entire fields devoted to the profession of war, and the people who study war do so for their entire lives. You don't become a four-star flag officer on a, well, you do nowadays, okay? But traditionally within the American military, this is a long 40-year process of guys that men and women who have studied war in detail in every aspect. And so when you begin to wage this process, these are people that are it's not just the bombs and the bullets, it's the logistics, it's the training, it's the preparation, it's the planning, there's a whole process that goes with this vast and complicated beyond belief. And the folks that are very, very good at this, that are managing these million moving pieces all the time, this violent process, that's a profession. Okay, it's not something for amateurs, and I don't care how many hours of years of war that you play. And it's very apparent when we went into Iran that instead of regarding that profession, the guy that's running this is a drunken bum of a Fox News host who was a perfect example of this is when the uninformed talk about, if it wasn't for these rules of engagement, by God. And as I say to them, well, tell me what rules of engagement prevent you from killing the enemy. Tell me what rules of engagement. We've won every battle for the last 70 damn years. It's the peace that we lost. All right. We were in Baghdad in 28 days. I know, I was there. All right. It was the peace. It was what came after we toppled all those statues of Saddam in Baghdad that you had a problem with. So tell me what rules of engagement prevented America from winning. We win the battles. And if you're saying that the rules of engagement that prevent us from dropping white phosphorus on children or napalming cities, if that's what you call an impediment to victory, which is literally what Pete Hegseth is saying, then that makes you a monster. You realize that, right? I mean, you murder people's children with missiles and white phosphorus and napalm. I don't give a shit how many bombs you got. Those people will fight you to the last man. All right. And so again, when you look at what's happening in Iran, the very fact that the president of the United States, the commander in chief, is literally on television saying nobody foreseen them closing the Straits of Hormuz. No one foreseen Iran lobbing missiles at critical infrastructure in the Gulf states. Literally every single one of us foresaw that. Closure of the Straits of Hormuz is literally the number one expected tactic in every single war plan with Iran for the last 50 fucking years. But they disregarded all of that because they think they're smarter than all of us, right? Because to them, war is dropping bombs on people. It's not a science. It's not a profession. It's not, and this is what happens when you put amateurs in charge of things. Saddam Hussein, in the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein had the fourth largest army in the world. He outmassed us, and of course, we didn't move our entire military over there. We moved the assets that were necessary for the job. And when Colin Powell led American forces into Iraq, it was against a force that was massively larger than our own on the ground. And that battle lasted about 12 hours. And Powell did something called the famous left hook. They didn't fight those people. They ground them into dust and ran over them in the trenches with tanks. And as horrible and violent as that sounds, what you're missing is the science, the tactics, the profession of it, where superior tactics and leadership defeated larger numbers and greater force. And this is what I'm talking about. And so you look at that lesson and completely disregard it, and then you go into Iran and say, well, nobody expected this. Well, we all expected this. All this shows how ignorant you are of your own experts, how much you disregard your own experts. But again, this is MAGA writ large on the world, on America, because what you're seeing now, 14 months in, is ballooning inflation, gas prices through the ceiling, farms failing, businesses failing, this idiotic trade war with tariffs that he started. All of this stuff now is coming to a head. It's all beginning to collapse. And what people forget is that we ended the last Trump administration standing in line for toilet paper and bread like we were a bunch of Soviet proles in the middle of the goddamn Cold War. And I say, well, that's COVID. Well, it was COVID. And if it wasn't COVID, it would have been war, or it would have been another pandemic, or it would have been a fuel crisis. There's always a goddamn crisis. That's what leadership is. That's why electing competent leadership is so goddamn important. Yes. Yeah, of course there was COVID. There was a pandemic. That's not an excuse. Competent leadership would have been able to goddamn deal with it. Trump is not competent. That's the problem. All right. And if it wasn't that crisis, it would have been something else. It would have been a meteor from outer space, or rising tides, or fire in the West, or something. There's always a crisis. This is the nature of the world that we live in. It's how you face it, how you deal with it, how you lead people through it. And Trump's methodology of leading people through a crisis is, I didn't do it. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. The guy never takes responsibility for anything. And you're seeing that
Yeah,
now.
now I got to interrupt there. He always takes credit for victories that he
Takes
declares.
credit and never takes responsibility. That's right. When I first joined the military, and this is a concept that's long out of date nowadays. But when I first joined the military, the general rule was leadership consisted of responsibility, authority, and accountability. And it meant that for you to be a leader and to be a member of the U.S. military, you were, first of all, first and foremost, responsible for your duties, responsible for your action, responsible for how you carried yourself, responsible for how you led others or how you carried out orders, how you followed others. You were first and foremost responsible, always, first and foremost. And you were given authority commensurate with your responsibility. That your authority increased with your level of responsibility, and that those two things combined resulted in accountability. And you were always accountable for your actions, for your failure to carry out your duties, for your failure to rise to the moment, for your or for your successes. And when those concepts declined, so did everything else. And again, you see this now. You see a leadership, an administration that that bears no responsibility for anything, that is completely unaccountable to its own self, let alone to the people. You have a Congress that has completely abdicated its constitutional responsibility. You saw this yesterday when Mike Johnson literally refused to even consider the funding legislation for TSA because the president of the United States told him to. Congress doesn't work for the president. Congress is an co-equal member of the government, and yet they act like they're employees of Trump Co. And my God, of course, Johnson was chosen specifically for his obsequious
You know,
self-service.
my daughter-in-law Elise works for the TSA, and she hasn't been paid in a month. And there was this
Right.
bill. All right, let's pay the TSA people. Let's pay the DHS, right? And Mike Johnson scuttled it. Yeah, I mean, Trump finally agreed. Okay, let's pay them, right? And Mike Johnson said, nope, I'm not going to pass it. I'm going to bring it to the floor. I tell you, it's like they're not even coordinating anymore. They're
Right.
not even
So
talking to each
again,
other anymore.
you have a Congress that has forgotten its place, forgotten its responsibilities, if they ever knew it. And but some of these people, I mean, there's some you look at and like Lauren Boebert. I mean, I doubt she could spell Congress, okay? But people like Ted Cruz knows. He knows. And I've heard him speak before Trump ever showed up. And he certainly knows what Congress's responsibility is. But he's so far up Trump's ass, he's forgotten it. He's given it up. He's deliberately given it up. And every once in a while, you can see a little bit of his soul escape out of his. You can see the look in his eyes as he knows the kind of sellout that he is. Another perfect example is Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, despite all his chest beating and proclamations of warriorhood, wasn't any of those things. He was an Air Force JAG officer. And JAG is certainly a necessary position in the military. Don't get me wrong, if they're doing the job that they're supposed to do, which the JAG Corps is, again, another outfit that's abdicated its responsibilities. And that's what Ron DeSantis was. He likes to present himself as a SEAL and a door kicker. And he's always got a picture of him with an MP4 or something. He wasn't any of those things. He was a JAG. And again, that's an important position, especially in special operations units. But he's not the guy out front punching holes in people, all right? He's the lawyer in the background. So when Lindsey Graham says the shit that he says, Lindsey Graham is a very dangerous man because he knows that he's wrong. He knows that he's lying. He knows it because this was literally his job. This is his background. He was a JAG officer. He is trained in constitutional law, and so when he comes out and he says the things that he says that are contrary to that, he's doing it on purpose. And this is the whole problem with things like Congress. Congress is not the servant of the president. Congress is the co-equal branch of government that is the check and balance on executive power and a direct representative of the people.
Yeah, their
And
job.
in the case of the Senate of the state.
See, the Republicans think that the government is about control, and the Democrats think government is about service. And that's
Right.
the real problem. Is it goes back and forth between control and service, control and service. And the thing is what we know from history, and you can verify this. Control always breaks because you cannot control the human race. You cannot control the population, but you can serve them. You can serve the population. You look at governments that are successful, and they're like Norway, and they are based on service. You look at governments that fail or are not working, and they're based on control, like North Korea.
Right. Well,
So,
you brought up a perfect example. If you look at Cold War governments, and you look at Scandinavia, for example, Switzerland, Norway is another good example. These countries during the Cold War, when the threat of and people nowadays forget or never knew this, just how imminent nuclear annihilation was every goddamn day. And a perfect example, I mean, we're science fiction people. We're all science fiction writers, and I think people, if you read the science fiction of the 50s and 60s, every other novel was post-nuclear Armageddon. Everything from Andre Norton's Daybreak 2250 to they're all kind of anyway. All
Pat
those
Fry's
stories.
Last Babylon.
Oh yeah, I mean they were all stories. I mean every other novel, because we fully expected to be living in a world that was knocked on its ass by nuclear war if we survived it. And during that mindset, and again, those of us that grew up in that period, I mean, literally, nuclear war was something they talked about in grade school. I mean, you literally expected nuclear war at any time. And so, and when you look at that, if you go back and you look at governments of that time in Scandinavia, the governments built bomb shelters for their entire citizenry. Now, whether or not those bomb shelters would have harbored those people or not, I don't know. But even today, in places like Switzerland, there are community shelters in every neighborhood because those governments said, how do we protect our people? In America and in Russia as well, what they did was build deep underground shelters for the leadership and the rich people and nobody else. When the Eisenhower highway system was being constructed in the 1950s, what we call it, I don't think we call it much that nowadays. I think it's Blue Star Highway System. But during that time, the original proposal was that there would be a fallout shelter under every overpass, the embankments under every overpass, since we had to pile all that dirt up anyway, would be emergency shelters for everyone. And that was overruled as being too expensive and impractical and unworkable. And if you're out on the highway when the bombs drop, oh, well, too bad, sucks to be you. And meanwhile, we spent trillions of dollars, adjusted for today's money, in deep underground shelters under mountains. Pony Mountain's an example, or Cheyenne Mountain's another one, and Raven Rock, and all these different places that we built to put all these people in. They built an entire underground facility under a hotel in West Virginia for Congress. Right? I mean, just billions of dollars. And the citizens of the United States, nothing. Not a goddamn thing. If there were shelters, you build them yourself. And again, that's the difference in mentality between the United States and Russia, for that matter, and places like Scandinavia or Switzerland or countries that said we've got to protect all of our people right now, and no matter what it costs. And you see that today. That mindset transcends because those countries today, while we're maybe perhaps less concerned, or maybe we're just numb to the idea of nuclear annihilation today, but those are the same countries that have universal health care. that have extensive maternity leave, that provide, that make sure that their citizens have housing and clothing and decent labor laws. And the countries that didn't think to protect their citizens from nuclear annihilation are the places where we live, where we don't have universal health care, where universal health care is the privilege of those that can afford it, where housing is the privilege of those that can afford it, where food and nutrition are a privilege of income. And
Can I?
It's let me kind of approach this. Maslow did that hierarchy
yep.
of needs, which food, clothing, shelter, and
Mhm.
and if you can get all the way to the top, it's self-awareness, self-realization. And right now, we have a government that is like, well, you're going to pay more for food and clothing and shelter, and we're not going to let you get any higher than that.
Right.
We're going to keep the minimum wage depressed. We're going to keep they are deliberately dividing. They're eliminating the middle class and dividing us into upper and lower. And
Right.
and the result is they're going to trigger a revolution. It may not be a violent one. It may be at
It may be
the
very violent. Yeah.
it could be, but I think it'll happen at the 2026 November elections. If they don't, if they can't stop the elections, it's going to be. I might be wrong, but it's probably going to be a blue tsunami because the polls show the Republican Party they're dropping below recovery.
Right.
Now,
Well, again, though, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, okay. Well, no, I agree with everything you guys are saying, but I haven't heard the word corruption used. And what we have in the country right now that scares me as much as anything else we're seeing is what I call the normalization of corruption.
Yeah.
America is so numb to the corruption that's taking place that it calls into question for me what's going to be our ability to keep the next power group, be it blue, be it purple, be it red, from continuing this dismantling of the antitrust elements in the country, and continuing to use the power of regulation in the FCC to control the media that it is, because we're already in a position where all the late night people that they are yelling and screaming about go on the air with scripts that are approved by corporate lawyers.
Right.
This is we are in an age of corruption that I don't think we will. When the historians take it apart and look at it, will say, "Holy shit!" Now, where in all of this is going to be the undoing, or the efforts, the success, the methodology for the undoing of corruption?
Well, let me talk about history, which history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And 1929, the economic crash destroyed the Republican Party for 20 years. It was 20 years before they got back into the White House. So it is possible that the blue wave that we all hope is going to come in November will do the same to the Republican Party, that it will take them out.
We lose David here?
Well, I didn't know if that was David was out or all of us were out.
No, I can see you and me, but David's frozen. So.
Well, let me look and see if he's still with us.
Right.
David is technically. There he goes.
Oh, there he is. There he is. We're good.
All right. Get me back. All right. We may be heading into a repeat of 1929, where things get so bad, the Republican Party, just to be a Republican is to lose. So now, excuse me, I have been wrong so many times in my political predictions that this one is probably wrong too. but I remain optimistic that, a tyrant can only go so far before he trips over his own shoelaces, and we have seen that. So
Right.
one of my favorite
I'd
stories.
say that you're not wrong, but I'd also say that the other side of it too, with America is kind of a unique political structure, in that right now what you're seeing. I mean, yesterday's a perfect example of this. There's enormous pushback against the Trump administration, and the wheels are kind of coming off the entire MAGA ideology process at the moment. I would say two things. First of all, this never had to happen. All you had to do was show up and vote. And I don't mean the last election, I mean the last 20 elections. Okay. We would be so much further ahead if again, and this is of course this is, and I sound like a libertarian. If only people would, well, guess what? People won't, and so this is the fundamental flaw in both that ideology and things like communism. People won't. They will do the most perverse thing possible
I'm okay. I'm
every
back.
time. Yeah, you're in and out there, David, but you're good now. But people will people won't just, and so that's part of the reason that the United States was created the way that it was, because the founding fathers knew that you couldn't depend on things like common sense, because that's bullshit. That's there's no universal common sense. The things that are common sense to me are chemtrails and anti-vax to somebody else, and so um, you can't depend on that sort of thing. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that I agree with you, David, that now you're seeing this massive groundswell, this pushback against what we're seeing in our society and our government at the moment. And while that may be that may ultimately result in the fact that no Republican can get elected for the next 20 years because of what Trump has done to their party, or what they've done to themselves. And Trump didn't do it; they did it to themselves. They willingly fell in line. But the flip side of that is that this is the moment where the opposition, which is mostly the Democratic Party, must rise to the occasion. And what they do in the next 3 years, in the next 8 months leading into this next election, and if if Democrats, as we all expect, and depending on what happens here, if there's a blue wave this November and Congress flips to the other side, then that's the moment where traditionally Democrats snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And what I mean by that is that overwhelmingly, you're seeing it yesterday. Americans are, as a majority, rejecting the ideology coming from the White House and the inaction coming from Congress. And there are things that while we on the left are very fractious and don't agree on goddamn anything, and are proud of that, there are things that we do universally agree on. Number one, if Democrats seize the House and the Senate and do not impeach Trump, they may never get elected again. If
I,
they,
I I believe the
they're
Democrats, the first thing they're going to do is impeach Trump
right.
once they get back in power. It has to be the
Democrats
first thing on the agenda. Um,
opposition they have to, despite all of their differences and all of their myriad agendas and all of the things that everybody on the left wants that are mutually incompatible. Democrats, when they take the House and the Senate, will have to
don't
unify
they need 60% in the Senate?
for certain things. So depends on what it is. The rules have been changed so much that some are a simple majority vote and some require 60 votes. Super majority require this and that. Yeah, those things need to be codified. They need to be clarified. It's just not only just those rules, but there are things that Americans have been demanding for years that we always seem to flinch at the last moment. Now, I will say the Democrats have stood pat on not funding ICE despite all the threats. And I really expected them to fold here the other day, and they did not do that. And so I consider that a good sign. But if Democrats are put back into power this fall, then they will have to make good
There we go.
on the things that Americans, that those who put them into office expect. And that the first thing that has to happen is that the Trump administration has to be held accountable. And Congress must be held accountable, must hold themselves accountable. This absolute failure to execute their constitutional duty as a check on executive power must be that nonsense has to end. This obsequious ass kissing bullshit of the Johnson speakership must be ended forever. The rules must be changed that require Congress to execute its duty to the Constitution first and foremost. That more than anything is what's necessary in this country. Another thing that Democrats will absolutely have to address immediately as soon as they regain power, if they regain power, is the goddamn Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a joke. It should. You can't trust anything from the Roberts Court, and I'm not just saying that because it's a majority conservative. I'm saying that you literally are seeing grossly partisan decisions that are obviously not the Supreme Court's duty. Its only duty is to the Constitution, and you're seeing decisions that are obviously in deference to Donald Trump in absolute abdication of their constitutional responsibility as the highest court in the land. Democrats must address that. And I'm not, notice I didn't say how. There are obviously many ways to go about that, from impeaching certain judges that should never have been appointed in the first place, to changing the makeup of the court, to increasing its size. Those are things for professionals to address, not some writer, podcaster, photographer guy like me. But they must be addressed. And if they're not, if Democrats fail to seize the moment to take firm and decisive leadership, then they're the ones who are likely to be asked out and unelectable from now on. Because I think the American public is about at it with this nonsense. And again, I'll tell you my background. As you all know, I'm a sailor. I was a retired Navy. I'm a retired Navy intelligence officer, but I was also a bridge officer. Every Navy officer has to qualify as a surface warfare, some type of warfare officer, whether it's airplanes or submarines, or in my case, it was surface warships. And the first rule of navigating a ship at sea is that when you're in danger, when you're approaching other vessels in congested waterways, to take early and decisive and obvious action so that the folks on the other side that are coming at you can tell immediately what your intentions are. And I would say that's the order that Democrats in Congress, decisive and obvious, unquestionable action. And that's not something they're good at. They always want to make friends. They always want to make peace. They always want to compromise. They always, in the end, always, well, oh, well, I guess we'll fund the military because we don't want to be the bad guys. They're going to have to hold the line. And again, this is not something they're good at. And I will say to you that the Democratic leadership in Congress right now is not up to the task. Chuck Schumer, Jeffries. These people are not up to the task. They simply are not. And I will say the last strong leader that Democrats had in Congress was Nancy Pelosi. And whether you like her or you don't like her, she won every battle. She stood toe to toe with them all the time. Whether you like her, you don't like her, you don't like where things went. Nobody ever intimidated her as a speaker. And you're not seeing that with Democrats. You're not seeing that kind of decisive leadership, the ability to hold the line. And if Democrats don't step up, if if the American public decides to put Democrats decisively back in charge this fall, and they don't live up to that promise, then they're the ones that are likely to find themselves on the outs, and people like Trump permanently the ideology of this country. And I hope they see that again. I mean, maybe they watch this podcast. I don't know, but but
Well,
again, it's imperative that we change the direction. Again, you know, until the Titanic hit the iceberg, they could have changed course at any time. They could have all of those. If you look at those kind of things, those disasters that happen. Again, I'm using seaborne metaphors, but if you look at those kind of disasters, the Titanic, the any pick any naval disaster or any maritime disaster, and you can watch a chain of events that lead inevitably to the iceberg. And and if you'd taken decisive action at any point along that timeline to do things differently, that accident wouldn't have happened. That disaster wouldn't have happened. All those people wouldn't have died. And you're looking at that right now. We can see the horizon. We can see the iceberg, man, and we're steaming at it full speed ahead. And so when you take the wheel, tiny little changes to so you don't rock the boat. That's not the way to go. I mean,
oh,
there are things that this country have demanded for years. I mean, healthcare. People can't afford healthcare. Their kids' teeth are rotting out of their head because they can't afford to go to the dentist. Rent is unaffordable for Americans. Food is unaffordable for Americans. You, you know, and so things like fuel prices, yeah, they're not wrong about this. They will come down if the war ends. Those are volatile things that go up and down, but there are trends that trend up all the time. We are letting companies like Hershey and AI company, and I say this as I'm holding a bottle of plastic water in my hand, um, take our goddamn water, right? Where communities can't afford water, where you can't afford to buy enough calories in a month to feed your children. Those are things that Democrats will have to address head on and decisively. And if they don't do it, they don't deserve to stay in office. What are you going to say?
I do, Jim, and I hate to do this to you because
You're
you're
full
on.
plug on me, aren't
It's hey, it's
you? Speaking of decisive, all right.
hey. I don't mind being decisive and saying to you, you're a wonderful human being. I respect you mightily, um, and I love your work, love your attitude, love your way of vocalizing and writing the issues that we need to pay attention to. And but right now, what we've got to do is something else. Is we've got to start planning for how we're going to undo the corruption that has been
Uh,
foisted upon us.
well,
Uh,
again, like I said, this is the Democrats have to take decisive action. There are certain things that they could immediately do instantly if they had a simple majority, and these are things like outlaw investment banking or outlaw investments amongst Congress. You can't own stock.
you know how many times Nancy Pelosi killed that option?
I know. That's what I'm saying. And those are things that she certainly did wrong. Again, when I mentioned her, those were things where I pointed out the fact that she showed decisive leadership. I'm not saying I agreed with all of it, and those are one of the things I absolutely did disagree with. But I mean, there's certain things that lead inevitably to corruption. You cannot put the fox in charge of the hen house, and this is literally where we're at. And there are small things that all Americans would rally behind. All right, and
Yeah,
that's one
I
of them.
believe,
Stock trading amongst Congress should be categorically illegal. Period. Done. You
and
know,
family members.
right? Yeah, exactly. And those are things that those things are things that already the structures in place. These are, and I just use that as an obvious example, but there are many other things. Healthcare being affordable, rent being affordable, groceries being affordable. Those things are all look, and I think we could all agree. Certainly, the big thing with Republicans all the time is the goddamn borders, blah blah blah. Okay, look, man, we could, if we were adults, sit our ass down with proper leadership and update our immigration laws. right? Nobody, despite the rhetoric, nobody left or right is talking about open borders and this. And the problem is that, of course, that kind of hatred and that kind of hyperbole and bombast are what put asses in seats and what put money in the plate. That's how it works. That's how human beings are. But in reality, these are things that we could all agree on. I'm not. There's obviously a very
Well, wasn't
wide
Mark
wide
Wright?
right, but those are things that could be agreed on. And again, these are things that Democrats should have a plan now, and they should be going. Again, a perfect example is, and I know we're supposed to pull the plug here, but a perfect example, and I said this to my wife yesterday where we were watching the debate over TSA, when Republicans come out and say, well, Democrats just they don't want to pay ICE. If I was Democratic leadership, I would seize that moment. Damn right. You're damn right. I would own that son of a bitch. You bet. We think that ICE should be defunded. It should be rebuilt. It should be eliminated, whatever the hell we think it should be. That we think more than anything that elements of the United States government should not be shooting Americans down in the street, should not be deporting people without due process. Again, own it. Step the hell up to it. The things that we actually all believe in. All right. And Republicans believe in that too. They just don't want to admit it because that's this kind of department that we're in. And Republicans obviously know that they believe in that because they were all upset about that exact thing when Obama and Biden were president. And so there is common ground there that decisive leadership could seize in that moment and turn it and turn it all right around on these MAGA assholes in Congress and throw their hyperbole right back in their goddamn face. But it requires decisive leadership and the ability to see the opportunity and seize the moment. And that's what they're lacking. Now, I would say to you, there are plenty of young people and passionate people on the left that have that ability. And when you poll this November, well, vote for those people because that's who we need. All right. We don't
And
listen, man. That's what we need. All right. Anyway,
and
if as
something
long as
else.
you, as long as you leave me my mic turned on, I'll just keep right on talking, buddy. Okay, that's how it
I know, and I can turn it off, but I choose not to because I
is.
respect you, Jim.
I rode 30 miles
Yeah,
this morning. I'm a hype man. I'm working
well,
through the
no,
day.
but the I'm going to quote David Gerrold here for a moment. Ain't no frickin' ponies on the ballot,
That's
okay,
right.
or unicorns or whatever the hell you
Right.
want.
Yeah.
The perfect
Unicorns.
candidate.
Yeah, ain't no unicorns on the ballot.
Yeah, I know that when my primary season is over, I'm going to have a guy that I believe in 70% of his positions. He's
Right.
going to be on the ballot up against a MAGA motherfucker.
Right.
Okay. Guess who
Yeah,
I'm voting for? The
look,
guy.
your choices are more fascism and the inevitable disaster that brings, or something that you're 60-70% in agreement with.
Yeah.
You know, that does not seem like a difficult decision to me. And you've heard me say this many times, and all of you out there watching that have read my stuff for 20 years, you've heard me say this. Look, being an adult is about very often about making decisions between two choices that you don't necessarily care for. I mean, when I was in the military and I was in places where people were shooting at us, a lot of times to get my people through that situation, I had to make a decision between options, none of which were great. But you still have to make that decision. All right. That's how it is. That's what being an adult is. I mean, you face these every day raising your children where you have to make decisions where there's going to be screaming and crying no matter what the hell you do, but you're an adult and it's your job to do that. This is no different. At the end of the day, come November, you're going to have to make a decision. And if one of those choices is something you absolutely love and you don't have any problem pulling the lever for, great. That's awesome, man. I wish it was like that all the time. But the odds are it's going to be one horrible choice, more fascism, and the inevitable disaster that leads to, and a choice that is 60, 70% of what you want. And those are the choices you'll be faced with. And what I get in that situation is we get down to it. We always have this fight every year. Yeah, the answer is always, it should be. And again, look, should be is what you vote for in the primaries. But in the general election, you have to put aside should be for what is. And you have to face reality. And you have to make a decision based on what is and not what should be and what you want. And this is
Yeah.
where we're at. And this is the problem with the last, like I said, it's not just the last election, it's the last 20 elections, right? And again, what did, was it Colbert that said, that coined the phrase in shitification? It wasn't Colbert, it was the other one. What's his name there? Um,
Kimmel?
but again, we've 20 years we have slowly increased the enshittification of America because we didn't get everything we wanted and we just let it get a little bit worse. Well, we're there, man. We're there. People talked about burning the world down. Maybe everybody will see it. Well, that's where you're at, man. And again, you've heard me say this many times. People die in a fire, and I have been in countries that are in the middle of civil war. I have been in the middle of those wars. You will not like it. We have the ability to change the course that we are on without killing millions of people and burning the country to the ground. Now, it's getting to be a close thing, right? Because we always think we're going to get another chance in America. We're down to it, right? And we have a chance to change the course that we're on without a civil war, without murdering millions of people, without the country coming apart at the seams and fragmenting, and we all wind up living on rats and recycled piss in a bunker somewhere. We have a chance to do that. But you got to show up and you got to make that adult decision, whether you want to or not. And we wouldn't
If I
be here if we had made different choices for the last 20 years. And again, we're talking about what should be and not what is. And now we're facing what is. These are the consequences. The left likes to say, fuck around, find out. Well, you're at the find out stage. This is the find out stage of not voting for 20 years. This is where you're at. We're there. And so we found out, and you're looking at it, and it ain't going to get any better. This is 1 year of this asshole, right? We're not going to survive 3 more. You got to show up whether you want to or not. That's where we're at. All right, I'm done. Pull plug.
Well, thank you, Jim. You
That's
got to show up.
That's what I told my wife when I fell early this week. I said, I'm done. Pull plug. Should have had it.
Hey, I will tell you what, sitting in the living room is my wife. She gets up early every last Sunday of every month. She doesn't watch our podcast. She listens to it through that open door.
Talk enough.
And but I tell you what she did. She went to her first No Kings rally.
Yeah.
Her first modern protest. She hadn't been to a protest since I drug her to Sheehan's Last Stand down there by George Bush's ranch.
I met your wife. She's definitely your better half. So, and I say that as somebody who knows who my better half is. Absolutely.
Well,
you met my wife too.
she is the more reasonable, smarter, easy to get along with person, and that's why I like her. And
that's right. That's right.
But again, she got up after getting out of the hospital for a couple weeks ago, and went down to that rally and sat there in her wheelchair with her sign. And I could only say it was one of my proudest moments, to see
Right. Well,
her.
it matters to a lot of people. There were a lot of people out there yesterday in wheelchairs and walkers, and they couldn't walk and couldn't stand. I was one of them. Um, it matters. It matters to a hell of a lot of Americans. And so, like I said, so come this November, should the opposition win the day, then they must make good on the trust placed in them by all of those people who showed up yesterday.
Yeah, because I
Absolutely.
can tell you, there were a row. We had a small protest here in town, less than 30 people, as opposed to the one
30
5
people,
miles
30
away,
people.
which was about
Yeah.
8,000 people. The
Yeah.
we but we had I just looked over at it, and it just kind of made me hurt a little bit because there's four folks sitting out there in wheelchairs. Uh, Half a dozen other people in their walkers. Um, these people got up off of their butt and showed up and waved their flag, made their points known, posted their pictures on Facebook, whatever, and they showed up. And if they can show
Yeah.
up for this, then you can open the goddamn envelope, fill out your
Right.
mail-in ballot while you still have them, and get us some reasonable people in Congress.
Right.
Um,
Well, and this is the thing, though. Those people showed up, and I saw this criticism online that a lot of the people that were there yesterday were older or were in wheelchairs or were in walkers or were, whatever the criticism was. But see, those are the people most affected by this fascist administration. Those are the ones that the Nazis pushed into the gas chambers under Acton 34, or Acton 4. These are the people that fascist society regards as worthless and useless and empty eaters who are just taking up space. And what the rest of the population fails to understand is that when you have eliminated the people in wheelchairs and the people in walkers and the old and the infirm, then that process doesn't end. It's you next. It's the
it
ones, and,
rolls
and the other
forward.
thing that the other thing, and we're all guilty of this in one degree or another. I mean, I was healthy my whole life until I wasn't, and um, I was military, man. I spent my whole life in strenuous activity until that I couldn't. We all get old if we're lucky. We all age, we all reach the point where we are those people, and we are a society. The direction that we're going in now, we have a mindset of administration that is essentially Logan's Run. If you're not young and healthy, then it's time for you to report to the reclamation chamber. And again, societies. Logan's Run wasn't a template for the world; it was a cautionary tale. And again, you have so many of the people that are in charge, people like Elon Musk. And what the hell's the deal with that guy's fucking hairdo? I just as an aside, but that read science fiction, that read this is a guy that read Banks and the culture and took all the wrong lessons from it. Right? Like all the wrong lessons, who literally read those stories and saw the bad guy, the villain of the story, and said, yeah, that guy's the hero. That's who I want. That's the future I want. Right? We can't
Well, I
let that
tell
happen.
you,
We can't let that happen. We've got to show up. That's the bottom line here, is that those people that were out there yesterday, your wife, the ones that were down here on the corner yesterday in my crappy little town, sitting in chairs and wheelchairs, because it mattered to them so goddamn much that even though it hurt them, they were down there. We owe those people. We owe ourselves. We owe society. We owe the future to stand against fascism. And all you have to do at the moment, no, again, don't tell me that you're going to take up arms and fight the fascists when you don't have the wherewithal to fill out a fucking ballot. Okay? Listen to me. Voting's easy, even if it's hard, even if getting there is difficult, even if they try to disenfranchise your ass, even if they do everything to keep you from voting, voting is still an order of magnitude easier than taking up arms and killing people for democracy. Okay? Now, I've been in the middle of Civil War, and I'm telling you this from experience. So if you can't vote come this November for whatever excuse you have, and don't tell me you're going to fight against fascism, because you're not. You don't have the wherewithal, you don't have the guts, you don't have the integrity. And I don't care what you tell yourself. So do the thing that you can do, which is show up and do your duty to all those people that were out there yesterday, to the nation, to the future. And even if you don't give a shit about yourself, do it for the generations who will come. History will remember what we do in this moment or what we don't do.
And do it for your frickin' grandchildren.
Yeah, damn right. All right, man.
Hey, thanks,
I'm
Jim.
going to start posting bird pictures if you don't let me go. I swear to God.
No, dude, I think you'll probably get a weird smile on your face as the depends fail.
That's right.
Hey, okay. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Thanks for